We have a very tense situation, but I don't consider it to be hopeless. Of course, I criticise Putin's politics when he tries to restore influence through old thinking, but I also have plenty of criticism for NATO and the EU. They didn't realise in 1990 that they needed to create a new security organisation with no Warsaw Pact and no NATO, not without Russia or against Russia, but with Russia, a common security alliance. It was in spite of promises that were made during the reunification of Germany. The eastward expansion of NATO has continued, gradually encircling Russia. Then there are the missiles stationed in Poland and the Czech Republic. Russia has said that this harms its security, but the West has refused to listen, and they insisted that those missiles were not targeting Russia. That's when the Russian foreign minister asked the US Secretary of State, if he were to install rockets in Mexico, would you trust us if we told you it was against Colombia or Cuba and had nothing to do with the USA? Of course no one would believe that, but the development of the missile shield has continued. Then there were other mistakes. I don't want to go into too many details. George W. Bush suggested bringing Georgia and Ukraine into NATO. Naturally, this was a provocation. Even a former US Secretary of Defense has admitted this. And then the Ukraine situation arose. On relations with Russia and the EU, they said, either you enter into an alliance with us or with the other side. And nobody understood that Ukraine should have become a bridge between the EU and Russia. This is unfortunate. Now there's talk of sanctions against Russia and also against the former Ukrainian president and his staff. I see this as one-sided. Why not also against the oligarchs that supported the other side? There's plenty of Ukrainian property located in France and other countries, and both sides have contributed to the current situation. I think, as Russia does, that the sanctions against it are unjustified, and I find it wrong when they say we need to bring NATO all the way to the borders. I would go down the diplomatic route to engage with Russia and propose a new relationship with the EU and NATO, and establish a security concept with Russia, not against it or without it. I would expand trade relations under one condition, that there will be no more countries or parts of them that will become Russian territory. But we have to have a positive approach. You can try to reach your goals through sanctions. Usually this doesn't have much of an effect. Or you can take the positive route and say, we can have a much better relationship, but you have to stop after Crimea and not absorb any other part of Ukraine into Russia. I think that would have been my vision for a positive development that we all urgently need. But as you can see, the situation is the reverse.
Are you concerned about the rise of far-right radicalism in Ukraine?
Ja, es gibt richtige Faschisten in der Ukraine, die auch Bestandteil der Regierung sind.
Yes, there are genuine fascists within the government. They are currently in leading positions. They have a deputy prime minister, defense minister, minister of agriculture, and environment minister. Besides that, there's a co-founder of the Svoboda party, which is not a member of this party right now, but is in charge of the security committee, a kind of intelligence service. Of course, there are democratic forces in the government, but the fascists never gave up the power they've got hold of. They have said many terrible things, and I'm not alone in thinking this. There are members of the Social Democrats and a former EU commissioner who have flatly refused to speak with these people. I don't understand how they can sign any agreements with them. Again, it's a provocation. They want to send money over. You have to demand a democratic election. Then when you have a democratic government, you can negotiate with them. I don't understand why it's happening now. I see it as another step towards escalation instead of the opposite direction. And I have to say that the government that has been installed is not a legitimate one. The former president was removed from power but not properly voted out, at least not according to the constitution. And then when I hear that the Crimean referendum is illegitimate according to the constitution, I ask my government, well, is the constitution valid or not? But I'm not getting any answers.